The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage, echoing like a gunshot in the midnight silence. I'd been under the hood of my '67 Mustang for 3 hours now, but my mind wasn't on the carburetor that needed rebuilding. It was on the woman upstairs who just demanded to see my phone like some kind of digital strip search. "Daniel!" Natalie's voice cut through the night air, sharp as broken glass. "Are you coming to bed or what?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag and glanced at the clock mounted above my workbench. It's 12:47 a.m. Perfect time for relationship drama, apparently. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd picked tonight, the same night I'd caught her deleting text messages at dinner, to suddenly develop trust issues about my phone. "Just finishing up," I called back, though we both knew I was avoiding the inevitable confrontation brewing upstairs like a storm front. "My name is Daniel Harper, and I fix things for a living. Cars, motorcycles, the occasional boat engine. Anything with moving parts that people have managed to break through neglect or stupidity. What I can't seem to fix is the slow-motion train wreck my marriage has become over the past 6 months." Natalie appeared in the garage doorway, her silk robe catching the harsh fluorescent light. Even at nearly 1 in the morning, she looked like she'd stepped out of a real estate magazine, which made sense, since that's exactly what she did for a living, selling dreams to people who couldn't afford them. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. The universal pose of a woman about to make a man's life complicated. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. Her best friend Brittany had been filling her head with paranoid nonsense about cheating husbands and secret affairs. Brittany, whose own marriage had imploded last year when she discovered her husband's gambling addiction, now viewed every relationship through the lens of her own spectacular failure. "About trust," Natalie said, stepping closer. "About honesty. About the fact that you've been acting weird lately." I almost laughed. Me, acting weird? This from the woman who'd started password protecting her phone 3 weeks ago and suddenly developed an urgent need to work late every Tuesday and Thursday night. "Define weird," I said, setting down my tools and giving her my full attention. "Secretive, distant, like you're hiding something." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I want to see your phone." There it was, the moment I'd been expecting since she'd stormed out of dinner earlier, claiming she needed to think about us. The loyalty test that would supposedly prove I wasn't cheating, wasn't lying, wasn't doing whatever she imagined I was doing in my spare time. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone, a beat-up iPhone with a cracked screen protector that I'd been meaning to replace for months. Without hesitation, I unlocked it and handed it over. "Be my guest," I said. "Check whatever you want. Messages, emails, browser history, photos. Knock yourself out." Natalie's eyes widened slightly. She'd expected resistance, arguments, maybe even anger. What she got was complete cooperation, and it clearly threw her off balance. "Really?" she asked, taking the phone like it might explode in her hands. "Really, but fair's fair," I said, extending my other hand. "Let me see yours." The change in her expression was instant and dramatic. The confident prosecutor became a nervous defendant in the span of a heartbeat. Her grip tightened on her own phone, which she'd been clutching since she walked into the garage. That's different," she stammered. "How so?" "My phone has work stuff on it. Client information, confidential real estate deals." I nodded slowly, as if this explanation made perfect sense. "Right. So your privacy matters, but mine doesn't. Got it." "It's not like that, Daniel. Don't twist this around." "I'm not twisting anything. You want to check my phone because you don't trust me? Fine. But if this is really about trust, then it goes both ways." I kept my voice level, reasonable. "Unless this isn't actually about trust at all?" Natalie's face flushed red. "Are you calling me a hypocrite?" "I'm calling you human. We all have things we'd rather keep private. The question is whether we're going to pretend this is about honesty when it's really about control." She stared at me for a long moment, my phone still in her hands, her own pressed against her chest like a shield. Finally, she thrust my phone back at me. "Forget it," she said. "Just forget it." She turned to leave, but I wasn't done yet. "Natalie, wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "If you're worried about something, just tell me. We can talk about it like adults. But these games, these tests, they're not solving anything. They're just making everything worse." For a second, I thought she might actually open up, might tell me what was really bothering her. Instead, she shook her head and walked back toward the house. "I'm going to bed," she said over her shoulder. "Lock up when you come in." I watched her disappear into the house, then looked down at my phone. 3 missed calls from Marco, my business partner and oldest friend. 2 text messages I hadn't had time to read. Nothing that would concern a faithful wife. But as I scrolled through my recent calls, I noticed something that made me freeze. A notification I'd dismissed earlier without really reading it. Find my iPhone. Natalie's iPhone. Location shared with you. My hands weren't quite steady as I opened the app. There was her phone, represented by a little green dot on the map. Not upstairs in our bedroom where she'd just gone, but downtown. At the Riverside Towers, the luxury high-rise where the city's young professionals lived in overpriced apartments with river views. I checked the timestamp. The location had been updated 20 minutes ago, while she was standing in my garage, supposedly coming straight from her office. My phone buzzed with a text message. The sender's name made my stomach drop. Jake Foster. Can't stop thinking about tonight. You're incredible. Can't wait to see you Thursday. The message was meant for Natalie, but it had come to my phone instead, which meant one of 2 things. Either Jake Foster was a very confused man who'd somehow gotten my number mixed up with my wife's, or Natalie had done something incredibly stupid with her phone settings. I sat down heavily on my workbench stool, staring at the message. Jake Foster. I knew that name. He was some hotshot tech entrepreneur who'd moved to town 6 months ago, buying up properties and making a big show of his success. Natalie had mentioned him a few times, always in the context of work, of course. A potential client, a networking contact, a perfectly innocent business relationship. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jake, this one containing a photo that left no doubt about the nature of his relationship with my wife. I set the phone down and looked around my garage, my sanctuary, the place where I came to think and work and escape from the complications of daily life. The walls were lined with tools I'd collected over 20 years of fixing other people's problems. Wrenches, screwdrivers, diagnostic equipment, spare parts organized in labeled containers. Everything in its place. Everything serving a purpose. Unlike my marriage, apparently. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through the message thread between Jake and Natalie. There weren't many messages. She'd been careful to delete most of them. But what remained painted a clear picture. Dinner dates, late-night meetings, plans to finally tell Daniel after she figured out how to let him down easy. The woman who just demanded to see my phone, who'd accused me of being secretive and distant, had been planning to leave me for months. The woman who'd made me feel guilty for wanting privacy had been living a double life with some trust fund pretty boy who probably couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed off the garage walls. The loyalty test. She'd actually given me a loyalty test while she was cheating on me with a guy who sent her photos that would make a sailor blush. My phone rang. Marco's name appeared on the screen. "You're up late," I said, answering on the second ring. "Could say the same about you. Everything okay? You sound weird." Marco had been my friend since high school, my business partner for the last 5 years, and the closest thing I had to a brother. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be him. "Define okay," I said, echoing my earlier conversation with Natalie. Oh, what did she do now? Marco had never been Natalie's biggest fan. He thought she was too high maintenance, too focused on appearances, too quick to spend money we didn't have on things we didn't need. I'd always defended her, chalked up his concerns to the natural suspicion mechanics have for anyone who doesn't understand the value of getting their hands dirty. "She wanted to see my phone," I said. "Loyalty test, courtesy of Brittany's paranoid theories about marriage." And when I asked to see hers, she suddenly remembered she had confidential work stuff on it. Marco was quiet for a moment. "You want me to come over?" "No, I'm fine. Just processing some things." "Daniel, listen to me. Whatever you're thinking right now, sleep on it. Don't make any decisions when you're angry." If only he knew I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was still in the analytical phase, the part of my brain that diagnosed problems before figuring out how to fix them. The anger would come later, once I'd had time to fully absorb the scope of the betrayal. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just disappointed." "That's worse," Marco said. "Angry passes. Disappointed sticks around." After I hung up, I sat in the garage for another hour, thinking. Natalie had wanted a loyalty test, and in a way, she'd gotten one. She'd tested my loyalty by demanding access to my private communications while hiding her own. She'd tested my trust by lying about where she'd been tonight. She'd tested my intelligence by thinking I wouldn't notice the inconsistencies in her story. She'd failed every test, but more importantly, she'd given me something valuable. Evidence. Screenshots of Jake's messages, location data from her phone, a clear pattern of deception that would be very difficult to explain away. I looked up at the house, where the bedroom light had finally gone out. Natalie was probably lying in our bed right now, thinking she'd successfully deflected my suspicions, planning her next move in whatever game she thought she was playing. What she didn't realize was that the game had just changed. The loyalty test was over, and now it was time for the final exam. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent the rest of the night in the garage, not working on the Mustang but planning my next moves with the methodical precision I usually reserved for engine rebuilds. Natalie was already gone when I went inside to shower and change. A note on the kitchen counter, written in her careful real estate agent handwriting. Early showing, home around 6. Let's talk tonight. N. Let's talk. As if last night's performance had been some kind of minor misunderstanding instead of a masterclass in manipulation and projection. I poured coffee from the pot she'd left behind, still warm, which meant she'd left recently, and sat down at my laptop. The first order of business was research. If Jake Foster was going to be a player in this drama, I needed to know everything about him. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. The internet age has made privacy a luxury that most people can't afford, especially people who like to show off their success. Jake's social media profiles painted a picture of exactly the kind of man I'd expected. Mid-30s, inherited wealth masquerading as entrepreneurial genius, the kind of guy who posted photos of his Tesla and his expensive dinners and his weekend trips to places normal people couldn't afford to visit. What was more interesting was what I found in the local business journal archives. Jake Foster, founder and CEO of Foster Digital Solutions, had moved to town 6 months ago after his company was acquired by a larger firm. The acquisition had made him wealthy enough to retire at 35, but apparently not wealthy enough to satisfy his ego. He'd been making noise about starting a new venture, something involving real estate development and smart city technology. Real estate development. Of course. I cross-referenced the timeline with Natalie's behavior changes. 6 months ago was when she'd started working late, when she'd begun password protecting her phone, when she'd suddenly developed an interest in professional networking events that she attended without me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marco. Coffee? Shop's closed this morning. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from my oldest friend at Mel's Diner, the kind of place that served coffee in thick ceramic mugs and didn't care if you occupied a booth for 2 hours. Marco looked like he'd slept about as well as I had, which is to say not at all. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. Feel worse than I look, I replied, stirring sugar into my coffee. Remember that loyalty test I mentioned last night? Yeah. Turns out she was projecting. I pulled out my phone and showed him Jake's text messages. Marco's expression darkened as he read. Jesus, Daniel, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry yet. Be impressed. I swiped to the location data I'd captured from the Find My iPhone app. She was at his place while she was accusing me of being secretive. Marco leaned back in the booth, processing the information. What are you going to do? I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for, I said. A loyalty test. But this time, I'm designing the exam. That sounds ominous. It should. I took a sip of coffee, savoring the bitter taste. She wants to play games? Fine. But she's playing in my garage now, by my rules. Marco studied my face for a long moment. You're not thinking about doing anything stupid, are you? Define stupid. Anything that involves violence, property damage, or criminal charges. I shook my head. I'm a mechanic, Marco. I fix things by understanding how they work, then making precise adjustments. Violence is what you do when you don't understand the problem. And you understand this problem? Better than she thinks I do. I finished my coffee and left money on the table. Want to help me with a little project? Back at the shop, I explained my plan to Marco while we pretended to work on Mrs. Henderson's Buick. The beauty of owning an auto repair business is that it gives you access to all kinds of useful tools and technologies that most people don't know exist. GPS trackers? Marco asked, holding up the small device I'd pulled from our inventory. We install them for fleet vehicles all the time, I said. Completely legal when you own the car. And technically I own half of everything in this marriage. Technically might not hold up in court. Won't need to. This isn't about court. It's about information. I showed him the other items I'd gathered. A voice-activated recording device no bigger than a USB drive, a dash cam with night vision capability, and a smartphone signal booster that could intercept text messages on the same network. Where did you get all this stuff? You'd be amazed what people throw away when they upgrade their security systems, I said. I've been collecting electronic components for years. Never know when they might come in handy. Marco looked uncomfortable. This is starting to feel like stalking, Daniel. It's not stalking when it's your own wife, I replied. It's fact-finding. She opened this door when she demanded to see my phone. Now I'm just walking through it. That evening, I was back in the garage when Natalie came home. I heard her car in the driveway, heard the front door open and close, heard her footsteps as she looked for me through the house. "Daniel," she called, "where are you?" "Garage," I replied, not looking up from the engine I was pretending to work on. She appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, still dressed in her work clothes, but looking less composed than usual. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair not quite as perfect as it had been that morning. "We need to talk," she said. "So you mentioned in your note." I straightened up and wiped my hands on a rag. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, like someone preparing to dive into cold water. "Last night got out of hand. I was stressed about work, and Brittany had been filling my head with all these stories about her divorce, and I guess I let it get to me." "Okay," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I don't actually think you're cheating on me," she continued. "I know you're not that kind of person. I was just, I don't know, looking for problems that aren't there." It was a good performance. Sincere, vulnerable, just the right amount of self-deprecating humor. If I hadn't seen Jake Foster's text messages, I might have even believed it. "Apology accepted," I said, "but I think we both learned something last night." "What's that?" "That trust isn't something you can test. Either you have it or you don't." I moved closer to her, close enough to smell her perfume and the faint scent of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "And if you don't have it, you need to figure out why." Natalie's eyes searched my face, looking for signs of suspicion or anger. I kept my expression carefully neutral, the same face I wore when diagnosing a tricky engine problem. "Do you trust me?" she asked. "I want to," I said, which was technically true. "But trust has to be earned back once it's damaged." "How do I do that?" "By being honest. About everything." I paused, giving her an opening. "Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all?" For a moment, I thought she might actually confess. Her mouth opened slightly, and I could see the words forming behind her eyes. But then she shook her head. "No," she said. "Nothing to tell." "Okay, then." I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Let's just move forward. Fresh start." She smiled back, relief evident on her face. Fresh start. After she went inside to change clothes, I finished installing the GPS tracker under her car. The device was magnetic and weatherproof, designed to be undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look for it. The dashcam went behind the rearview mirror, its lens so small it looked like part of the mirror assembly. The recording device was trickier. I needed somewhere in the house where Natalie would feel comfortable having private phone conversations. Her home office seemed like the obvious choice, but it was too risky. She might find it during one of her cleaning sprees. Then I remembered her favorite spot for phone calls, the back porch, where she liked to sit with her morning coffee and catch up with friends and clients. The device would fit perfectly under the porch swing, protected from the weather and positioned to catch conversations clearly. By the time I came inside for dinner, Natalie had changed into jeans and a sweater, looking more like the woman I'd married and less like the polished real estate agent she'd become. She'd ordered Chinese takeout from our favorite restaurant, the one we used to visit every Friday night before her career started demanding more of her time. "Peace offering," she said, gesturing to the containers of food spread across the kitchen table. "Accepted," I said, sitting down across from her. "How was your day?" "Busy. 3 showings, 2 of them complete wastes of time." She served herself lo mein and passed the container to me. "People who want $1 million houses on $100,000 budgets." Sounds frustrating. It is, but there's this new development project that might be interesting. Mixed-use commercial and residential, right downtown by the river. Her eyes lit up as she talked about it, the same enthusiasm she used to show when discussing our plans for the future. "The developer is looking for local real estate partners." "Anyone I know?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "Jake Foster. He's new in town, made his money in tech. Really smart guy, lots of innovative ideas about urban development." There it was. The lie delivered so smoothly, so casually, that I almost admired the technique. She was testing me, seeing if I'd react to Jake's name, probing for signs that I knew more than I was letting on. "Sounds promising," I said. "When do you think you'll know more about it?" "Soon, I hope. We're meeting Thursday to go over some preliminary plans." Thursday, the same day Jake had mentioned in his text message, the day he couldn't wait to see her. "That's great, honey," I said. "I hope it works out." We finished dinner making small talk about my work, the weather, the plans for the weekend. Normal conversation between a normal married couple, if you ignored the undercurrent of deception running beneath every word. After Natalie went to bed, I sat in my home office and activated the tracking software on my laptop. The GPS device was already transmitting data, showing Natalie's car parked in our driveway. The dashcam was recording to a cloud storage account I'd set up specifically for this purpose. By Thursday evening, I'd have enough evidence to confront her with the truth. But confrontation wasn't my goal. I didn't want to catch Natalie cheating, I wanted to understand why she was doing it, and more importantly, I wanted to control how the situation played out. She'd given me a loyalty test, and I'd failed it in her mind simply by asking for the same transparency she demanded from me. Now, it was my turn to design a test, one that would reveal not just her infidelity, but the true nature of the woman I'd married, the woman who could look me in the eye and lie about meeting another man while accusing me of being secretive, the woman who was about to learn that some games have consequences she never saw coming. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of October day that makes you forget winter is coming. I spent the morning at the shop with Marco, trying to focus on work while my phone buzzed with location updates from Natalie's car. "She's at the office," Marco observed, looking over my shoulder at the tracking app. "Been there since 8:30. "For now," I said, adjusting the timing on a Ford pickup. "But the day's young." At 11:47 a.m., the GPS dots started moving. Not toward a client showing or a property inspection, but straight downtown to the Riverside Towers, Jake Foster's building. "There she goes," Marco said quietly. I watched the dots stop in the parking garage beneath the high-rise and stay there. The dashcam would be recording everything: Natalie's face as she checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, her expression as she walked toward the elevator, the timestamp that would prove she was lying about a business meeting. "You okay?" Marco asked. "I'm fine," I said, and surprisingly I was. The anger I'd expected to feel was replaced by something colder and more calculating. Disappointment, like Marco had said, but also a strange sense of relief. The uncertainty was over. The marriage I'd been trying to save was already over. I just hadn't been invited to the funeral yet. My phone rang at 2:15 p.m., and Natalie's name on the caller ID. "Hey," I answered. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to let you know I'm running late today. This meeting with the developer is more complicated than I expected." "No problem. Take your time." "Thanks for understanding. I'll probably be here until 6 or 7. Here, being Jake's apartment, according to the GPS tracker that showed her car hadn't moved from the Riverside Towers parking garage in over 2 hours. "Love you," she said before hanging up. "Love you too," I replied automatically, the words feeling strange in my mouth. At 6:30 p.m., I was sitting in my truck across the street from the Riverside Towers, watching the building's entrance through binoculars. I'd told Marco I was going home early, but instead I'd driven downtown to see the performance firsthand. At 6:45, Natalie emerged from the building. Even from a distance, I could see she looked different. Hair slightly mussed, clothes wrinkled, the satisfied expression of someone who just spent the afternoon doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. She got in her car and drove straight home, probably expecting to find me in the garage as usual. Instead, I waited 15 minutes before following her, giving myself an alibi and her time to compose whatever story she'd prepared for the evening. When I walked into the house at 7:20, Natalie was in the kitchen, already changed into fresh clothes and starting dinner. She looked up with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she'd asked hundreds of times before, but now loaded with new meaning. "Good. Productive." I kissed her cheek, noting the faint scent of unfamiliar aftershave. "How was your meeting?" "Exhausting," she said, turning back to the stove. Jake had all these ideas about smart building technology and integrated retail spaces. Very forward-thinking, but complicated to implement. "Sounds like he knows what he's doing." "Oh, he does. He's very hands-on." I almost laughed at the unintentional double meaning, but managed to keep my expression neutral. "That's good in a business partner?" "Exactly." She served pasta onto 2 plates, her movements slightly more animated than usual. "I think this could be really big for us, Daniel. The kind of opportunity that could change everything." Change everything. She had no idea how right she was. We ate dinner discussing the fictional business meeting, Natalie spinning an elaborate story about market analysis and development timelines and zoning regulations. She was a good liar. I had to give her credit for that. If I hadn't been tracking her every move, I might have believed the performance. After dinner, she excused herself to take a shower, claiming she felt gross after a long day of meetings. While the water ran upstairs, I checked the voice recorder I'd hidden under the back porch swing. 3 new audio files, all from this afternoon. I put in earbuds and listened to the first recording. Natalie's voice, breathless and excited, talking to someone on the phone. "Brittany, you should see this place. floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, a view of the entire city. And Jake? God, Brittany, he's nothing like Daniel. He's sophisticated, successful, he knows what he wants, and he goes after it. The second recording was shorter, Natalie talking to her mother. No, Mom, I haven't told him yet. I need to be smart about this. Daniel's not going to just walk away quietly, and I need to make sure I'm protected financially. Jake says his lawyer can help, but timing is everything. The third recording made my hands clench into fists. I know it seems cruel, but honestly, Brittany, I've outgrown this life. This house, this town, Daniel's little garage. I want more than this. I deserve more than this. Jake understands that. He sees my potential. I pulled out the earbuds and sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone. 7 years of marriage, and this was how she really felt about the life we'd built together. Not just the affair, but the complete dismissal of everything I was, everything I'd worked for. The shower stopped running upstairs. I deleted the audio files from my phone. I'd already backed them up to a secure cloud account, and went to the garage to think. Natalie wanted more than the life I could give her. She wanted Jake Foster's penthouse apartment and his trust fund lifestyle and his sophisticated approach to getting what he wanted. She was planning to leave me, but only after she'd figured out how to maximize her financial advantage in the divorce. The woman who'd accused me of being secretive had been planning the end of our marriage for months, consulting lawyers and strategizing with her friends about how to protect herself from the man who'd supported her career and shared his life with her. But she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I spent the next hour in the garage, not working on any car but planning my next move. Natalie thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She thought her sophisticated lover and his expensive lawyer would outmaneuver the simple mechanic who didn't understand her potential. She was about to learn that some of us have been playing chess all along. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Jake. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Murphy's Bar downtown. Come alone. I stared at the message, trying to figure out how Jake Foster had gotten my phone number and why he wanted to meet. Then I realized what had happened. Natalie had told him about our trust issues and her loyalty test demand. Jake was worried that I was getting suspicious, and he wanted to size up the competition. Perfect. I typed back, I'll be there. The game was about to get very interesting. Murphy's Bar was the kind of place where working men went to drink beer and forget about their problems. Dark wood, dim lighting, and a bartender named Eddie who'd been pouring drinks there since before I was born. It was the last place I'd expect to meet a tech millionaire, which was probably why Jake had chosen it. I arrived 10 minutes early and took a booth in the back corner where I could watch the door. Eddie nodded at me from behind the bar. I'd been coming here occasionally for years, usually after particularly frustrating days at the shop. The usual? He called. Yeah, thanks. He brought over a bottle of local beer, the kind they didn't serve in penthouse apartments. You look like you've had a day. You could say that. I took a sip and settled in to wait. Jake Foster walked through the door at exactly 8 o'clock, scanning the room like he expected to find cameras or recording equipment. He was shorter than I'd expected from his social media photos, probably 5'8" and expensive shoes that added an inch. Well dressed in the way that screams money. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, watch that cost more than most people's cars. He spotted me in the back booth and walked over, his confidence wavering slightly as he took in the atmosphere. This wasn't his natural habitat. Daniel? He asked, extending a manicured hand. That's me. I shook his hand, noting the soft palms and the nervous energy. Jake, I presume. He slid into the booth across from me, looking around the bar like he was visiting a foreign country. Thanks for meeting me. Curiosity got the better of me, I said. How did you get my number? Natalie gave it to me. She said you two were having some communication issues. Did she now? I took another sip of beer. And you thought you could help with that? Jake ordered a craft cocktail that Eddie definitely didn't know how to make, settling for a whiskey neat when I suggested it. He was trying to project confidence, but I could see the anxiety in his eyes. Look, Daniel, I'm going to be straight with you, he said once Eddie had delivered his drink. Natalie and I have developed a professional relationship that's become complicated. Complicated how? He took a large gulp of whiskey, clearly needing the courage it provided. We've grown close, closer than either of us intended. I nodded like this was new information. Close. She's an incredible woman. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. She deserves more than... He gestured vaguely, apparently unable to finish the sentence. More than what? More than this. Another gesture, this one encompassing the bar, the town, presumably my entire existence. She has so much potential, so many dreams she's never been able to pursue. Such as? Travel, culture, experiences beyond this small town. I can give her those things. I leaned back in the booth, studying his face. And what exactly are you asking me? Jake straightened up, trying to project authority. I'm asking you to let her go, gracefully, without making this messy for anyone. Messy? Divorce can be ugly, Daniel. Expensive. Painful for everyone involved, but it doesn't have to be. He pulled out his phone and showed me a contact card. This is my attorney. He specializes in amicable separations, fair settlements that protect everyone's interests. I looked at the card but didn't take it. You've thought this through. I care about Natalie. I don't want to see her hurt by a prolonged legal battle. How considerate of you. I finished my beer and signaled Eddie for another. Tell me something, Jake. How long have you and Natalie been professionally close? He shifted uncomfortably. A few months. But Daniel, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. My second beer arrived and I took a long drink. You're a successful man who's used to getting what he wants. You saw something you wanted and you went after it. I can respect that. Jake looked surprised by my reasonable tone. Really? Really. In fact, I admire your approach. Very direct, very efficient. I leaned forward. But I have a question for you. Okay. What makes you think she won't do the same thing to you? What do you mean? I mean, if she's willing to lie to me for months while planning her exit strategy, what makes you think you're special? What makes you think you won't be sitting in a bar 5 years from now, having the same conversation with the next guy who offers her something better? Jake's confidence faltered. That's different. Natalie and I have a real connection. We understand each other. Right. And she and I didn't? No, I mean, look, Daniel, no offense, but you and Natalie are from different worlds. She needs someone who can match her ambition, someone who understands her goals. I nodded thoughtfully. Someone with money. It's not about money. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of his Tesla in the Riverside Towers parking garage. Nice car. What's that worth? About $100,000. His face went pale. How did you? I'm a curious guy, Jake. When my wife starts working late every Thursday, I pay attention. I swiped to another photo, this one showing Natalie walking out of his building. Especially when those late nights involve visits to luxury apartments downtown. Jake's hands were shaking now. Daniel, listen. Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening to everything. I played a brief audio clip from one of Natalie's phone calls, her voice clearly audible discussing their affair. She's very chatty when she thinks no one's paying attention. You recorded her? I documented her. There's a difference. I put my phone away. See, Jake, you made the same mistake she did. You underestimated me. You thought I was just some dumb mechanic who wouldn't notice his wife cheating, wouldn't fight back when someone tried to steal his life. Jake stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do. I remained seated, my voice calm and level. Because we're not done talking yet. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you about the woman you think you're in love with, and about the man you thought you could push around. I gestured to the empty seat. Sit down, Jake. We have a lot to discuss. He hesitated, looking toward the door. Eddie was watching us now, his expression neutral but alert. Jake was outnumbered and outmaneuvered, and he was smart enough to know it. He sat back down. Good, I said. Now let's talk about what happens next. Jake Foster had gone from confident predator to nervous prey in the span of 10 minutes. He sat across from me in the dim booth, his expensive whiskey untouched, sweat beading on his forehead despite the bar's cool temperature. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I want the truth, I said. All of it. How long has this been going on? How did it start? What exactly has my wife told you about me and our marriage? Jake looked around the bar as if searching for an escape route. Finding none, he slumped back in his seat. 6 months. It started 6 months ago when she showed me a property downtown. We went for coffee afterward to discuss the listing, and we just connected. Connected. She told me she was unhappy, that she felt trapped in a life that was too small for her dreams, that you didn't understand her ambitions or support her career goals. I almost laughed. I'd been the one who encouraged Natalie to get her real estate license. I'd paid for her classes, covered our expenses while she built her client base, celebrated every sale like it was my own victory. What else did she tell you? That you were controlling, that you monitored her activities and questioned her friendships, that you made her feel guilty for wanting more than what this town could offer. The irony was staggering. She'd painted me as controlling while I'd been giving her complete freedom to pursue her career. She'd accused me of monitoring her while she was secretly planning to leave me. She'd claimed I didn't support her ambitions while she was sharing intimate details of our marriage with a stranger. And you believed all that? Jake's face flushed. She seemed genuine, vulnerable, like someone who'd been emotionally suppressed for years. Did it ever occur to you to question her version of events? To wonder why a controlling, unsupportive husband would encourage his wife to build an independent career? No. I trusted her. You wanted to trust her, I corrected, because it made you feel better about sleeping with a married woman. It's easier to be the white knight rescuing the damsel in distress than the homewrecker destroying a marriage. Jake flinched as if I'd slapped him. It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? I pulled out my phone again and played another audio clip, this one from Natalie's conversation with Brittany about Jake's apartment and his sophisticated lifestyle. Listen to that and tell me she's with you for your sparkling personality. The recording played in the space between us, Natalie's voice clear and damning. Jake says his lawyer can help, but timing is everything. I need to make sure I'm protected financially. Jake's face went ashen. She said that? She said a lot of things. About outgrowing her life with me, about deserving better, about your lawyer helping her maximize her advantage in the divorce. I leaned forward. Tell me, Jake, how does it feel to be someone's meal ticket? That's not... She wouldn't... But his protests lacked conviction. The evidence was right there, in Natalie's own words. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice taking on the same tone I used when explaining expensive repairs to customers who didn't want to hear the truth. You're going to end this affair, tonight. You're going to tell Natalie that you've reconsidered your relationship and decided it's not worth the complications. I can't do that. You can, and you will, because if you don't, I'm going to make your life very complicated very quickly. Jake tried to summon some of his earlier confidence. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining consequences. I have recordings of Natalie discussing your affair, photos of her visiting your apartment, GPS data showing her lies about where she's been. I have enough evidence to destroy her reputation in this town and yours along with it. You can't prove anything illegal. I don't need to prove anything illegal. I just need to prove you're both liars and cheaters. I smiled coldly. How do you think your business partners will react when they find out you're the kind of man who seduces married women? How do you think Natalie's clients will feel about working with someone who lies as easily as breathing? Jake's composure cracked completely. Please, Daniel, I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now you have a choice. End it quietly and disappear from our lives, or deal with the consequences of continuing. What kind of consequences? I pulled up another app on my phone, this one showing Jake's social media profiles. You like to post about your success, don't you? Your car, your apartment, your business deals. Very public lifestyle. So public figures are vulnerable to public exposure. One anonymous tip to the right gossip blogger, one viral social media post, and your reputation is destroyed forever. I showed him screenshots I'd already prepared. Amazing how fast information spreads these days. Jake stared at the phone screen, seeing his own posts arranged in a way that told a very unflattering story about his character and his involvement with a married woman. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you an opportunity to do the right thing voluntarily. The alternative is having the choice made for you. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the situation settling over both of us. Jake finished his whiskey in one gulp, then signaled Eddie for another. She'll hate me, he said finally. She'll get over it. Natalie is very good at adapting to new circumstances. And then what? You and she just go back to playing happy couple? I shook my head. That marriage ended the day she decided to cheat, but how it ends is still up for negotiation. Meaning? Meaning she can learn about your change of heart gradually, naturally, or she can learn about it the hard way when everything comes out at once. I finished my second beer. Your choice, Jake. But choose quickly. My patience has limits. Jake's second whiskey arrived, and he stared into the amber liquid like it might contain answers. If I do this, if I end things with Natalie, you'll leave me alone? As long as you stay away from my wife and my life, we'll never see each other again. And the recordings? The photos? Insurance policy. As long as you keep your word, they stay private. Jake nodded slowly, the fight going out of him completely. Okay, I'll call her tonight. No. I stood up and dropped money on the table for both our drinks. You'll call her right now, while I'm here to make sure you say the right things. Daniel, now Jake. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed Natalie's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and affectionate. Jake, I was just thinking about you. Natalie, we need to talk, Jake said, his voice strained but audible in the quiet bar. Is everything okay? You sound upset. I've been thinking about us, about what we're doing, and I can't continue this. Silence on the other end of the line. Then? What do you mean? I mean, I'm ending this. The affair, the relationship, all of it. It's over. Jake, what's wrong? Did something happen? Is this about Daniel? Jake looked at me desperately. I nodded for him to continue. It's about me, he said. About my conscience. I can't be with a married woman anymore. I can't be responsible for destroying your marriage. My marriage was already destroyed. Jake, please, don't do this. We can figure it out together. No, Natalie, I'm sorry, but my decision is final. Please don't contact me again. He hung up before she could respond, his hand shaking as he set the phone on the table. Good, I said. Now block her number. Jake did as instructed, his movements mechanical and defeated. One more thing, I said. If she shows up at your apartment or your office, you're not home and not available. If she sends messages through mutual friends or business contacts, you don't respond. As far as you're concerned, Natalie Harper no longer exists. I understand. I hope so, Jake. Because if I find out you've had any contact with her, our next conversation won't be nearly as civilized. I left him sitting in the booth, staring at his phone and probably wondering how his perfect plan had fallen apart so quickly. The walk to my truck felt like a victory lap, but I knew the real game was just beginning. Natalie would be calling me soon, probably with some story about Jake having a crisis of conscience or getting cold feet. She'd want comfort, reassurance, maybe even sympathy for her friend who'd let her down. What she'd get instead was the next phase of her education. My phone buzzed as I started the truck. A text from Natalie. Coming home now. We need to talk. I smiled and put the truck in gear. Round 2 was about to begin. I was sitting in the living room when Natalie burst through the front door, her face streaked with tears and her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. She looked around wildly, as if expecting to find Jake hiding in our house, then focused on me with desperate intensity. Daniel, something terrible has happened, she said, rushing toward the couch where I sat reading a magazine. What's wrong? I asked, setting aside the magazine and giving her my full attention. Jake Foster, the developer I've been working with. He just called and ended our business partnership. Out of nowhere, no explanation, just said he couldn't work with me anymore. I frowned with what I hoped looked like genuine concern. That's strange. Did something happen with the project? No, everything was going perfectly. We had plans, contracts in development, a whole timeline mapped out. She collapsed into the chair across from me, her hands shaking. He said something about his conscience, about not being able to continue. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe he got cold feet about the investment? Real estate development is risky, especially for someone new to the area. Natalie shook her head violently. It wasn't about money. He has plenty of money. This was something else, something personal. Personal how? She hesitated, and I could see her calculating how much to reveal. We'd become close, as business partners. Maybe he thought it was getting too complicated, mixing business with friendship. How close? I asked, injecting just the right amount of suspicion into my voice. Just friends, Daniel. Professional colleagues who got along well. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and her voice lacked conviction. I stood up and moved to the window, looking out at our quiet street. Natalie, is there something you're not telling me? What do you mean? I mean, you're more upset about losing a business partner than I'd expect, unless he wasn't just a business partner. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. When I turned around, Natalie was staring at me with a mixture of fear and defiance. What are you suggesting? She asked. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking directly. Were you having an affair with Jake Foster? The question hung in the air like smoke. Natalie's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, indignation, guilt, and finally resignation. How did you know? She whispered. I've known for weeks, I said calmly. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in password protecting everything. You weren't as careful as you thought you were. Tears started flowing freely down her cheeks. Daniel, I can explain? Can you? Can you explain why you accused me of being secretive while you were cheating on me? Can you explain why you demanded to see my phone while hiding your own? Can you explain why you made me feel guilty for wanting privacy while you were living a double life? It wasn't supposed to happen, she sobbed. It just developed. Jake understood me in ways you never did. He saw my potential, my dreams. Your potential? I laughed, a harsh sound that made her flinch. You mean his money, his penthouse apartment, his ability to give you the lifestyle you thought you deserved. That's not fair, isn't it? I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings I'd made. Natalie's own voice filled the room, talking to Brittany about outgrowing our life together, about deserving better than what I could provide. Natalie's face went white. You recorded me? I documented the truth, the same truth you've been hiding for months while planning your exit strategy. Daniel, please. Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend this never happened? Please make this easy for you like Jake was supposed to? She looked confused. What do you mean, like Jake was supposed to? I mean, your boyfriend didn't have a sudden attack of conscience, Natalie. I had a conversation with him tonight, a very enlightening conversation about you, about your relationship, and about his future involvement in our lives. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You threatened him? I educated him about the kind of woman he was really involved with, and about the consequences of continuing that involvement. Natalie stood up abruptly, anger replacing desperation. You had no right. You destroyed everything. I destroyed nothing. You did that the first time you lied to my face, the first time you chose another man over our marriage, the first time you decided I wasn't good enough for your grand ambitions. Jake loved me. Jake used you, and you used him, and both of you tried to use me as the convenient fool who wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. I moved closer to her, my voice dropping to a whisper. You all made the same mistake. You underestimated me. Natalie backed away, her eyes wide with something approaching fear. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? I smiled, and apparently something in that smile terrified her more than anger would have. I'm going to give you exactly what you wanted, Natalie. I'm going to set you free. What do you mean? I mean, you're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. Right now. This is my house, too. This is my house. My name on the deed, my money for the down payment, my credit backing the mortgage. You can take your clothes and your personal items, but everything else stays here. You can't do that. I have rights. You had rights. You gave them up when you decided to cheat on me and plan your escape with another man's lawyer. I pulled out my phone again. Would you like me to play the recording where you discuss protecting yourself financially in the divorce? The one where you talk about timing and legal strategies? Natalie's shoulders sagged in defeat. Daniel, please. Can't we work this out? Can't we try counseling or... Work what out? You don't love me, Natalie. You don't respect me. You don't even like me very much. You said so yourself, in your own words. Recorded for posterity. I was angry when I said those things. You were honest when you said those things. Maybe for the first time in months. I walked to the front door and opened it. Pack your bags. You have 1 hour. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Brittany will let you stay with her while you figure out your next move. Maybe your mother has room for her disappointed daughter. Maybe you can find another Jake Foster to take care of you. She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. Maybe not at first, but every day you continued the affair. Every lie you told, every time you made me feel guilty for suspecting the truth. All of that was meant to hurt me. Or at least you didn't care enough about me to avoid hurting me. Natalie walked toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. What about my things, my furniture, your clothes and personal items? Everything else was purchased during our marriage with shared resources. You can fight me for it in court if you want, but I have recordings of you admitting to adultery and planning to defraud me in the divorce. How do you think that will play with a judge? She climbed the stairs without another word. I could hear her moving around in the bedroom, opening drawers and closets, the sounds of a life being hastily packed into suitcases. My phone buzzed with a text from Marco. Everything okay? Haven't heard from you since this morning. I typed back, everything's perfect. I'll call you tomorrow. 45 minutes later, Natalie came downstairs with 2 large suitcases and a box of personal items. She set them by the door and looked at me one last time. This isn't over, Daniel. I'll fight you for half of everything we built together. Go ahead, I said. But remember, I have evidence of your adultery, your lies, and your premeditated plans to defraud me. I have recordings, photos, GPS data, and witness testimony. How much do you think your lawyer will charge to fight a case you can't win? She picked up her suitcases, struggling with their weight. I didn't offer to help. You've changed, she said from the doorway. You're not the man I married. You're right, I replied. I'm not the fool you married, and that man is gone forever. She walked out into the night, loading her car with the remnants of her life in our house. I watched from the window as she drove away, her taillights disappearing around the corner. Then I went to the garage, opened a beer, and called Marco. "It's done," I said when he answered. "The whole thing?" "Jake Foster is out of the picture permanently. Natalie is gone. The marriage is over. How do you feel?" I considered the question, taking inventory of my emotions. "Free," I said finally. "For the first time in months, I feel completely free." "What happens now?" "Now I start over. Clean slate, fresh beginning, no lies or betrayals or games." I raised my beer in a toast to the empty garage. Checkmate. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my workshop, surrounded by tools and projects and the honest work that had always made sense to me. Outside, the night was quiet and full of possibilities. Natalie had wanted to see what I was hiding, had demanded loyalty tests and transparency while living a lie. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for, just not in the way she'd expected. The devil she thought she knew had turned out to be someone else entirely.